Hello, grade 7. This is teacher Regina, and today we will discuss about congruency and properties of two-dimensional shapes. But let us start. What is a congruency? We can say that the two shapes are congruent if they are exactly the same shape and size. Transformation showing a congruency of a shape. Transformation included reflection, rotation, and translation. Let us start with the reflection. The shape is reflected to the other side, but still, it doesn't change the size and the shape. Next is rotation. The shape is rotated 90 degrees on the other side, but still, it doesn't change the shape and the size. Translation. Object is translated to the other side, but still it doesn't change the shape and the size. Look at this L shape. This L shape, it is already translated, reflected, and rotated, but we can still say they are congruent to each other. Now, let us have another example. Look at this one. Once we use a grid lines, it is easy to find out if the shapes are congruent to each other. Let us look which shape are congruent to the shape A. So B, it looks like the same as the shape of letter A. So let us see how we will know. On this side, it has 5 square, and on this side, it has 3 square. So, B also, it has 5 square, and it has also a 3 square. So, it means B is congruent to shape A. Let us see which is another one that is congruent to the shape A. Shape C is also congruent to shape A because it has also 5 square on this side and 3 square on this side. So we can say that C also is congruent to the shape A. Next, F, it looks like the same as the shape A, but let us check it. So as you see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it has 5 square also, and here it has 3 square also. So it means F also is congruent to the shape A. So we will say that B, C, and F are congruent to shape A. Let us have another figure. Shape X is congruent to shape Y. But we need to find out which side is congruent to each other. We will see which side of the figure X is congruent to the side of figure Y. I will start with letter A. Which side is congruent to the side letter A? Side K is congruent to the side A. So we say A and K is congruent to each other. Next, which side is congruent to B? N is congruent to B. So we say B and N are congruent. Next, C. Which side is congruent to letter C? So I is congruent to letter C. So we can say that C and I is congruent to each other. Next, D. Which side is congruent to letter D? M is congruent to letter D. So D and M is congruent. Next, E. Which side is congruent to letter E? H is congruent to letter E. So we say E and H are congruent. Next, F. Which side is congruent to letter F? L is congruent to letter F. So we say F and L is equal to each other. Next is side G. Which side is congruent to the side G? J is congruent to side G. So we say that G and J are congruent to each other. Next, look at this figure. Which two shapes are congruent to each other? A and C are congruent to each other. Which another one is congruent to each other? D and H is congruent to each other. So this is shape A and C, they are congruent. D and H, they are also congruent. Now let us see a video that will explain more about congruency.
Random polygon. A polygon is a closed figure with 3 or more sides. And we have another polygon here. Are these two figures congruent? Well, they look like each other, but the condition for congruency says that these two figures are congruent if one, when placed on the other, they both should overlap exactly. If we move this one over the first one, we can see that it overlaps exactly. It means they are congruent figures. Let's erase this and draw another polygon. And here's another one. Are these two figures congruent? At first, they don't look congruent, but that's the trick. This polygon, when placed on this one, overlaps exactly, so they are congruent too. Doesn't matter how they are placed, that's congruency. But let's understand a bit more about congruency. When are two figures congruent? It's simple. They should have the same shape as well as the same size. Say we have a shape like this and another one like this. We can easily say that they are not congruent as they're completely different shapes. Now look at this shape and this one. We can see that their shape is the same. But wait, their sizes are different, which is why these two figures are also not congruent. But what about these two shapes? They have the same shape as well as the same size. They are congruent figures. But we cannot place a figure on the other to know if they are congruent or not. So how can we say if two figures are congruent or not? We need to understand a simple concept first. Is it only figures that can be congruent? Consider two segments, segment AB and segment CD. Both measure 3 units. Can we say that they are congruent? Of course we can. Segment AB is congruent to segment CD. What if we have two angles like this with the same measure? Say both measure 60 degrees. Yes, these two angles are also congruent. Coming back to our question, when are two figures congruent? Look at these two triangles. When can we say that they are congruent? We can say that these two triangles are congruent if all the matching sides and all the matching angles are congruent. We will understand more about congruency of triangles in the coming videos. Random polygon.
Okay, so now let us have an activity. I hope that video, it helps you more to understand what is congruency. Now let us have a short activity. In this activity, you need to find out which shape is congruent to shape A. So I will give you 30 seconds to find out which shape is congruent to shape A. Okay, now let us see. Which shape is congruent to shape A? That is shape B. I hope you get the same answer. Anything else? Let us see. Also, the shape C is congruent to shape A. Shape G is also congruent to shape A. So shape B, C, and G are congruent to shape A. So there are things that you need to remember about congruency. First, if one shape can be rotated, reflected, or translated to fit exactly onto another shape, then the shape are said to be congruent. Congruent shape have the same area, size, angles, and length as each other. So these things you need to remember in order to find out if the shapes are congruent. That's all for today, and I hope you understand our lesson today. I will send you some worksheet to answer, and I will wait for your answer. Thank you for listening. Keep up the good work and keep safe. Stay at home. See you soon, class.